Hello everyone, I am Vaishnavi J. Desai, Assistant Editor for Emerging Technologies at ETCIO. Welcome to this webinar by ETCIO and Google Cloud on building generative AI applications with Google databases and cloud runtimes. Over the course of the discussion, we will help you discover deeper insights into leveraging Google Cloud's infrastructure for generative AI applications. I am joined by esteemed speakers Dandapani Shanmugam, Principal Engineer at Google Cloud India, and Anu Vajra, Startup Success Manager at Google for Startups Program. Hello, Dandapani sir. Anu, so nice to have you on board for this webinar.
Hi, Vaishnavi. Good afternoon.
Generative AI is bringing a shift in business operations and innovations, thereby offering unprecedented opportunities to automate tasks, generate content, and also enhance decision-making processes. However, realizing the full potential of generative AI requires more than just algorithms. What it definitely needs is a robust infrastructure, which is capable of handling large data sets, deploying models seamlessly, and also ensuring security and compliance. Today, together, we will unpack advanced data management techniques, optimizing AI model deployment, establishing comprehensive governance frameworks, scaling applications effectively, and last but not the least, ensuring security and compliance throughout the deployment lifecycle. I would request the audience to leave your questions about the session in the chat box and we will address them at the end of the session. I repeat, I request the audience, whatever questions you have during the session, leave your questions in the chat box and we will address them at the end of the session. Without further ado, I invite Dandapani to begin his session. Dandapani, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Vaishnavi. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your time. Today, we'll be discussing about how do we build the GenAI applications leveraging Google Cloud by addressing the nuances which Vaishnavi has referred to in terms of building, in terms of accessing data, in terms of deploying the models, also how do we serve at scale. All of this with lots and lots of security, and how do we do this in a responsible way. So Google is known for several things, right? Whether it is search, email, YouTube, Android, and many more such applications. The thing that is common across all of these is data. I'm sure you guys would appreciate. Google was born as a data company. In the year 2000, we had about billion indexes to deal with. Google looked at that as an opportunity for us to solve the, I would say, the large scale data set, which would have the variety, variance, as well as velocity. Also, we have been applying ML into each of these real world scenarios and the applications, what I referred to. And also, how do we build AI into our products? This is something which we've been practicing for over a decade. I'm sure all of you would appreciate, and I'm sure we are using almost all of these applications in our daily course. Google's path-breaking work in transformers research as well as the diffusion models is the basis for what we see as a Gen AI applications, the evolution, what's happening today. You may really want to feel confident that you are working with a company who invented transformers. Also, some of you might say, or the industry looks at us as the founding fathers of the large language models. And Gemini is just the most recent manifestation of this technology leadership. Right? I'm sure all of you would have heard about Gemini, the Gemini 1.0, which was released last year, as well as Gemini 1.5, which is made available this year. And this is something I would say an LLM model which supports multimodality. Let me just leave that particular statement at this point, then we will delve deeper into what I mean by this multimodality. So, what could be the different use cases for generative AI? Here, actually, I would like to touch upon some of the industry scenarios, what I've been seeing with some of the customers whom I'm working, right? The use cases would vary across, I would say, four different paradigms to make it tangible to all of us. The first one is complex data handling. and also how do I make sense out of this data in a way which is acceptable for my customers. That is the first, I would say, the paradigm where I see a lot of use cases. The second one is, I mean, we all would have seen the customer support scenarios have kind of evolved over the I would say the last decade or so. It started as a mere I would say a phone call, then IVR came into play, then chat systems came into play, but then can we look at a scenario, the pre-sales engagements or an enterprise trying to reach out customers, can that be automated? I see this shift is happening. This is pretty useful, I would say, for two different reasons. If you look at the seasonal sale kind of imagine that we need to have a system that needs to support the pre-sales motion, but then that the opportunity is only for a 3 months kind of window of time or a month of time. How do I build the ecosystem or my sales force where it needs to support the particular industry use case, the relevance and the context of that particular, let's say, the time of the day or the time of the year when that is happening? How do I build my sales force for this kind of a use case? And can I take the entire scenario into completion? Meaning, like we all might get a call where somebody is where a sales executive would try to explain the product what they are trying to sell, including the use cases, including how it would be applicable. Also, can they take it to completion? Is what something which I'm seeing as a shift, which is pretty much possible with the generative AI. The second paradigm shift it's happening is in the content generation, whether we generate content in the text, in the form of text content, or make sense of the content in the form of audio or image or video. That is a there is a huge shift is happening. The other aspect is, when we generate the content in one particular language, how do I make sure that I'll be able to serve my customers who would want the local presence in their in their language of preference? Or can I interact with my customers in a way they would like it, rather than I would want to have a particular accent which is from a particular geo? How do I do that? Generative AI is kind of making it possible. The last one is, how do I make sure that I have this is for the AI practitioners, right? I want to solve a problem, but then I don't want to start from the scratch. Would I be able to start from like what is existing? Will I be able to do a quick pre-train using the data what I have and then take it to market? These are some of the use cases what I see, how the industry is adopting. But then this is all like, I mean, if you look at it in some sense, these are all like B2C, but there is also a B2B2C. When enterprises are trying to use the Gen AI, when they want to adopt Gen AI, the use case is a plethora. So I did talk about the Google's evolution as a data company. I did talk about the how some of the research which has happened in Google uh, like played a pivotal role for where LLM and Gen AI today. But then, what is my view of what makes Google Cloud as the right choice, right? So I would say it's kind of threefolded. Number one, a deep history of the research and innovation together, right? The kind of learning what Google has in some of the offerings, what I refer to as a Gmail, search, map, or YouTube, the kind of learnings what Google has, and also how do we serve in a safer way, right, across all of these. If you have to deal with the billion indexes, I would say like 20 years back, and then if you have to make sense out of the billion indexes and serve the customers in terms of what they want, it is all the learning, right, the deep history of the research and innovation. The second one is the deeply integrated capabilities, whether it is the AI offerings, whether it is the infrastructure, whether it is the way to deploy the model, or whether it is to consume the models which are available as a first party or third party offerings. I would say that is my aspect number two. The third one is whatever we are going to leverage from the Google Cloud, it is all built on the foundation of the enterprise and the enterprise access or enterprise aspect in mind. What do I mean by that? Generally, I use this particular analogy. When we try to teach a kid who's like a 1 year old, how do I teach a kid what is a carrot? What is a carrot versus what is the difference between a carrot and and a radish? How do we teach that? Right? As parents, we take utmost care. As parents and elders, we take utmost care when we try to teach. We want to make sure that the kid picks up the right things in a right sense, and also it is not getting misled. How do we make sure all these three aspects will be followed throughout the journey of AI adoption? So that is my aspect 3 of why Google Cloud could be the right choice, because it is built on the foundation of safety first, and it is built at the foundation of like the I would say very very minimal hallucination or no hallucination. How do we do it? Right. So these are the three aspects why I would say Google Cloud and Google Cloud AI is the right choice. Okay, what's happening? So let me say till 2023, what we have seen as the AI adoption, I would say it's about 5%. But what we see in the last 18 months or so, it's about 15x of what we have seen over the decades. That is the kind of paradigm shift which is happening. This is going to surge even faster, right? So that is how I read it personally. So building a chatbot itself won't be nearly enough if you have to adopt AI. So what does the I mean, what are the general predictions by 2026? Looks like, this is again my personal view. Also, the well-known predictions like Gartner, right? That's all, they are also alluding to this. 80+% of the enterprises will be using AI via APIs or models. So and then this is going to have a multifold increase. So how do we help enterprises in a way that it's not about a mere chatbot, it's about solving customers their problems in the right context, in the right manner? This is the shift which I am envisioning. So here I'm going to introduce, there is something called Gen Eng. What does it mean by that? Generative engineering. Why am I doing this? There is an order of magnitude of innovation which is going to happen. That is the potential with the AI. So who are going to drive this? It is the combination of, I would say, data analysts, data scientists, as well as developers. But then considering that the adoption needs to happen faster, I would say the developers would drive the bulk of the innovation in applying the generative AI research, what's happening in the back end. And also, how do we address the business problems? The integration of Gen AI technologies would happen for the new as well as the existing applications. So I would want to draw parallel to what we have undergone, I would say, in the last decade or so. We have coined a term called DevOps. It was not existing 10 years back, right? So what is that? The engineers were getting used to or getting accustomed to what's happening in the operation, and they were also transforming into DevOps, not only about developers and testers and engineers, DevOps. Like how a similar adoption would happen, a shift would happen with the rise of this generative engineering, what I call it as gen engineering, right? So what do I mean by that? So with this Gen Eng, the real value of the enterprise comes when developers can combine the generative AI with the proprietary data of enterprises, right? It's not only about the enterprises and the startups and the companies which are going to adapt and which are going to build for generative AI. It's also about building, leveraging what we have as the proprietary data. So, what is it going to solve? It is going to be accurate in nature and domain specific in nature. So, for this, the kind of shift, what is going to happen, the developer ecosystem also need to evolve. So, that's exactly what we are going to talk. And also about how do we leverage the operational databases, which would be sitting at the heart of the application data. So, these are, I would say, two of the focus areas for today's discussion. One is about how do we provide the runtimes required, for developers and engineers to adapt and also to make the AI applications coming at a faster pace. The second one is how do we make sure that it is going to be pertaining to the data what the enterprises would have. Yeah, so would it happen easily? The answer is no. There is a complexity involved in any such evolution, right? Where we have seen for DevOps during the containerization phase. So there were changes happening to the CI/CD. Likewise, there are challenges, existing challenges in front of us for companies to adapt. Right, the first one I see is the skill gap. It's about 58% is what the information which I've gathered. There is a gap. As an industry, we need to solve, and also from Google, we are trying to see like how the gap can be addressed so that the engineers can become gen engineers at a faster pace. That is number one. The second one is availability of the data, right? So there are concerns on the data quality and availability where there are siloed data in the, like it could be in the structured and non-structured or unstructured form. How do we make sure that it is cleansed and it is available for the LLMs to be consumed for the model building as well as model serving, right? Lastly, one third of the companies which I was referring to in my previous slide, uh, like when it comes to AI, cyber data security and privacy would also play a role. This is, I would say, in my lens, like I mean, as an engineer, if I look at, if somebody who has seen the security aspects and also data security, DDoS, those kind of aspects, they would be able to relate to it. But when it comes to AI, it is mostly due to the lack of the kind of vulnerability, right? What are the vulnerability where I'm getting exposed to? I would say the lack of understanding. So once we address these three, the adoption would happen fast, and the gen eng would definitely would evolve, and then it would be making, I would say, multi-folded jump in terms of supporting the industry. Yeah. So if you ask me, building the applications like what we did in the past, and how did we build, where did we deploy, how did we make it available, would it be enough for the AI transformation? The answer is no. But then do we need to start everything from the scratch? The answer is no again, right? We have been possessing the engineering mindset as well as the engineering skill set. It's all about how do we tweak and adapt, unlearn and relearn some of these things what is required for AI. So in my view, there are three P's, I would say, right? Which would be the ingredients for successful AI or Gen AI app building. Number one is proximity. How do we keep the data and applications as close as possible to maximize the performance of the Gen AI or LLM models and also reduce the latency, total RTT? The second one is the platform. How do we choose a platform or how do we grow with the platform where the LLMs are new applications, if you ask me, right? An integrated tech stack and platform. How do I get a platform so that I'll be able to develop faster? I'll be able to take it to market faster in a secure and scalable way. That is second P for me. The third one is productivity. It's not only about building, because for any new technology adoption, if the way I would look at it is, if there is a 0 to 1 where I have an idea, I need to quickly build an MVP and I should like start showcasing the MVP to the outside world. The second one is how do I scale it, right? From 1 to 10, 10 to 25, 25 to 100. How do I scale? How do I make sure the system is secured even if I'm scaling, right? Like where and the pace at which LLM is evolving, at least I have not seen that, right, in the last 10, 15 years, where what it took about 5 years for a technology adoption, it's happening in 5 months. When we are all evolving and then trying to run at that pace, how do we make sure my productivity is kind of grounded as well as secure and scalable? So I would say proximity, platform, and productivity are the three P's which are really important, and I would say the core ingredients for a successful AI adoption. So here I'm introducing Google Cloud Gemini, but then I'm introducing what is Google Cloud Gemini. It is an LLM model uh, it's a multimodality in nature. Where what do we mean by multimodality? It can accept text as an input, it can accept audio as an input, image and video as an input, it can produce text as an output. You look at it, there are multiple modalities. I'm sure as data scientists and engineers, we will be able to appreciate when a model need to deal with, I would say, these different multimodalities. How do I make sure that I train the data in, I train the model in such a way that it'll be generative, it'll be accurate, but it'll also be able to support more than one of these modalities, right? So that is quickly about Gemini. But then, like, what do I mean by Google Cloud Gemini for the Gen engineering, right? Or Gen Eng, which I refer to. It's all about how do I generate code in a faster pace? How do I, like, validate my code? How do I build a summarization or text generation or content generation? Or how do I like generate a code which is for the existing system what I have? What do you mean by that, right? I may be using a particular cloud. I may be using a particular infrastructure. I may be using a particular technology and programming language. How faster will I be able to generate code? And how faster I'll be able to like build my unit test code so that it'll get integrated at a faster pace, right? So that is, I would say, the inner loop of where Gemini for developers. The outer loop is all about like how do I make sure that my code is not vulnerable. I know from where exactly I'm getting the code, what is the source of the code. Am I violating any of the norms, any of the processes, or how would I be able to scale fast in a way that is acceptable for my industry or for my, I would say, the organization, right? So that is Google Cloud Gemini for developer ecosystem. Right? It's all about AI assistants across the entire development lifecycle, if you look at it that way. Yeah. So what we had, I would say, a two-tier, a three-tier design, right? I'm sure all of us would have encountered in one or other phase of our engineering life cycle. So we had these applications. Again, we can divide that into the front end, middleware, as well as the layer which will be interacting with the DB. The second layer is DB, right? So this is how it used to be when we were developing a multi-layer kind of an application, which was serving for millions of DAOs, daily active users. But then, what would be the difference at a higher level? What would be the difference if I have to if I want to become a Gen engineer, if I want to do it for generative AI, right? So the way I would look at it is we are going to add another layer apart from this app and DB, but I want to make sure, right, I'm doing it in a way it is scalable. I'm doing it in a way it is going to be supportive for the total RTT and SLA what I'm adhering to or what I'm supposed to adhere to. Number one. Number two, it should also be grounded, meaning a company, let's say that a particular bank, uh, a bank which is going to come up with an application, a loan application, right? If they want to have, let's say, a query engine kind of a system, I'm just giving an example, a query engine kind of a system for its customers when they approach the bank, it need to respond, right? Imagine I'm a startup where I'm trying to develop that application. I'm developing that as a SaaS application which needs to be adapted by more than one bank. Imagine that as a scenario, right? So what would be the difference generally for a particular loan product or a particular let's say a savings product between a bank A versus bank B, right? There could be variation in the interest, there could be variation in the benefit, there could be variation in the way like how do you interface with the system, and how do you get the benefits or like I would say invest as well as receive the benefits from the bank. So these are different variations. So for this to happen, imagine like I'm going to have an LLM, large language model, a Gen AI kind of an interface needs to be built for as built as a SaaS and offered as a SaaS to banks. If that needs to happen, I also need to make sure, right? I'm not only generative in nature. I'm not only a superb model in nature. My application also need to be grounded, or my application need to serve for bank A the capabilities of bank A with respect to the product. For bank B, the capabilities of the bank B as well as the product and its offerings, right? That's where the interaction between the large language models, which are mostly foundational in nature, and also there are a certain level of, I would say, uh, training or fine tuning happen for a particular industry or a particular use case or a particular language or a particular context. But then still the existing enterprise data also needs to be consumed. That is where I would say it is the application multiple layers what we have evolved into, the LLMs, right, the foundation models or the fine-tuned model for a particular context, and the way the models interact with these existing data, right? So these are, I would say, three paradigms. A small shift, if you ask me. We had the red box of application and the blue box of databases. So we are introducing this green box, right? I'm trying to oversimplify. Yeah. So here I would like to introduce the different capabilities part of Google Cloud AI. I would want to spend a minute talk about yeah, from the bottom up. Um, the offerings support multiple personas. One is about the AI practitioners, the who would be leveraging the GPUs, TPUs, and the accelerated infrastructure of the world, or like I'm somebody like who have built models, or I'm somebody who needs to use the foundation models, but then I want to fine tune, or I want to make my model available to the outside world. I want to externalize because I have a very unique model. That is where the next layer from the bottom, the vertex A model garden plays a role. I am somebody who want to build those models, right? I am somebody who would consume the foundation models. I would want to fine tune. I would want to build the reinforcement learning. I want to make sure that I validate side by side, right? There is a capability called side by side in Google Cloud. I want to validate my model or I want to validate the prompt, right? So that is the third layer as part of the Google Cloud offering. It's called the Vertex AI Model Builder. The top of the layer, right, as part of Vertex AI is called Agent Builder. So I am somebody, I would fall under, let's say, the application builder kind of category. There I have my own existing application, or I'm building trying to build a brand new application. I want to leverage some of the capabilities like, let's say, doc AI or a search as part of my application. Do I have a capability? Do I have a model or an API available? The answer is yes. And then how do I do the plumbing, and how do I make sure that I try to integrate the capabilities from multiple of these, the doc or a search or existing models. I want to go to market faster. So that is where the agent AI builder would come in play. So basically it's all about the infrastructure as part of the Vertex or Google Cloud, GPUs and TPUs, the model garden, where I'll be able to access first party and third party models, or the model builder where I want to customize the models what I have, or I want to fine tune the models, right, what I built, or I want to keep evolving, right, an ML ops into an ML ops. That is model builder. The agent builder is something where I have my application, or I'm trying to build a brand new application. I want to do the plumbing with a lot of other capabilities, and I want to go to market faster. That is, I would say, agent builder. So far, if you look at it, we touched upon the AI practitioners, like who were depicted as the blue box on the left hand side. The second one is developer ecosystem, the Gen Eng, which I just introduced, the new terminology. The last one is like I'm a business user, right? So I'll be able to, I want to put together a use case. I want to make sure that I'm able to build or I'm able to design a product, right? So will I be able to leverage the existing capability? The answer is yes. So as part of the Vertex, there are capabilities for business users to start leveraging Vertex as well. So by the way, Vertex is our, I would say, Vertex is part of Google Cloud. It provides the entire ML ops capabilities, right? From I would say from the ideation till the model deployment and model serving. Yeah, so I'm trying to double click into what I mentioned in I would say in the last 1 minute. So there are different capabilities for somebody to build the model to consume the model. So here I'm trying to give I would say a different view in terms of like if I have to build models, or if I have to build the model from ground up, if I have to consume the models, how would I be able to leverage the Google Cloud ecosystem? and how would we be able to do it in an iterative process, right? So model building and model management, like how DevOps evolved, MLOps is also evolving. That is also plays, I mean, that also plays a very important role in terms of I need to make sure the entire life cycle of the model building as well as model serving is taken care. Okay, so you may ask me, right? You did talk about GenEng, you did talk about LLMs, I mean, and you did talk about grounding. Then why do I need to focus on, let's say, like the moment I say that LLMs can solve any problem, I can ask any question to LLM, the large language models, which supports about, let's say, million tokens. I'll be able to get answers. But then, is it enough for me to build the enterprise apps? The answer is yes and no. The reason I'm making no is because, I mean, as I emphasized, right, the models need to provide accurate and up to date information. The banking scenario which I was referring to, banking use case, and they also need to offer the contextual user experience, right? It is very very important. Otherwise, we might lose the users. Or if I'm an enterprise, I might lose my users in the first few minutes of my interaction with them. And the last one is it should be easy for developers to build and operate, right? So that is why I would say LLMs alone wouldn't be enough. They are really good, great, but they are alone won't be enough. We also need to have the ecosystem for us to be accurate, contextual, and easy for us to leverage. Yeah. So for that, what do I need to do? I do have these foundation models. I do have these apps available, but then my business data is keep evolving. I need to have a mechanism where the my business data can be consumed as part of what I'm trying to build, right? That I call it as an ops data operation database that bridges the gap between the foundation models and the enterprise gen AI apps by grounding the models and also making the models to be very very context aware. So what are the different mechanisms? You may ask me, right? You talk about you. I mean, you did talk about GenEng, you did talk about LLMs, you did talk about the operational databases what I have. But how do I bring my data into the GenAI apps which I have to build? What are the different mechanisms for me to interact and then get my data into the LLMs, right? Or into interface with the LLMs? I would say there are three options. The number one and easiest, right, is for me to prompt. The way I would look at prompt is I need to know how exactly I interact with this model, like how I interact with my kids, right? With our kids. How do we interact with them? We would want to be as specific as possible so that you don't get a very generic response from them. There are two options we would do. Either we might ask multiple questions, like how teachers ask us question A, question B, question C, or we need to try to give the context to the kids so that you would get the right response from them because their knowledge is plethora, right? They have enormous amount of knowledge. If you ask me, likewise LLMs, they are very knowledgeable. But then how do I make sure that I make the best use of LLMs? The first one is prompting. How do I do or how do I interact with the LLMs by giving the right prompt? What do you mean by that? Say, for example, the use case what I was referring to, if my LLM need to behave like a pre-sales executive, pre-sales executive who is going to sell an education product, pre-sales executive who is going to sell a product which is related to a weather condition, pre-sales executive which is going to sell, let's say, like uh, a travel and transport kind of a use case. So I need to first designate the LLM. You are an expert in the education industry. I am trying to build a calculator application. Can you help me do this math to the fourth digit position? If you look at it, all of these are specifics which I'm trying to instruct the LLM, like the way we interact with our kids, our teachers interact with the kids. This is really important. Two things are going to happen. One is the accurate our prompting is, we'll end up spending less. Otherwise, these LLMs would let's say that they would accept millions of tokens, we would also be charged, right? We need to be mindful about that. So I need to make sure that I develop the right prompt. Then I get so that I'll be able to get the best response from these LLMs in a way it is acceptable to me. So that is number one for me, prompt engineering. The second one is fine tuning. What do I mean by that? Right. Again, I'm going back to the banking use case. What I meant, or what I referred to. Um, like, I mean, I may get different responses for different banking scenarios. Then I could be a SaaS application provider, but then how do I make sure that I'm supporting the enterprise bank which has just come to me in a way that they'll be able to go to market faster? So for that, I should be able to provide them an option for them to do the fine tuning. In Google Cloud, it's pretty much possible as part of the Vertex AI. Once we have, there's something called supervised fine tuning. Once I have my, let's say, a model which is foundation, or a model which is being like fine tuned or pre-trained for a particular concept, a particular context, or a language, there is the fine tuning is the provision of the mechanism by which I'll be able to tune it for the particular enterprise's use case. That is number two for me. The third one is a programmatic way of making the LLMs grounded, right? I would say RAG, retrieval augmented generation. I'm sure most of you would have heard about that. It's called RAG. It helps you to programmatically look up the relevant information from the existing operational database which I was referring to, or data warehouses, or any other sources of truth. So there are three means, to summarize, for us to interface with the LLMs or Gen AI models: prompting, like the hey teacher ask an instruction and get the right response from the students, or we get it from our kids. The second one is fine tuning. The third one is RAG. These are three mechanisms by which we'd be able to bring our data to Gen AI so that they'll be grounded and they'll serve what is required. Yeah, again, I thought I'll try to give another view in terms of, I use three different words: retrieval, augmented generation. Where would each of these words would play a role when I'm, let's say I'm a startup, or I'm a SaaS provider, or I'm a like a B2B2C provider? Where would each of these words will play a role in this particular mechanism, third mechanism which we spoke about? Retrieval, augmented, and generation. Where, like, how do I try to retrieve based on what I'm being asked, right? As an LM or an application. The second one is, how do I get that general response, and how do I make sure that my prompting is very as specific as possible so that I'll be able to augment what I got with what I want. That is number two. Number three is then generate, right? You try to leverage some of these what we received as the information, and you try to augment each of these so that we'll be able to serve to our use case in a most prominent and best effort. I would say, in the most accurate way, right? Accurate, not the right word. That's why I was trying to restrict myself. But then, yeah, how would we be as close as possible to what is being asked? That's the right way to put it. Yeah, again, another view. If you look at the right hand side, I did talk about RAG. I did talk about how do we orchestrate the interaction between database and AI models. So basically, we need to leverage. There is a concept called embeddings. I'm sure you would have heard about embeddings. What would it do? It lets us to encode the words, documents, or large information in numerical vectors. Then the embeddings are created by passing the word or document through an embedding model. And then embeddings also help us to be low dimensionality compared to the higher dimensionality of the models, right? So basically, the embeddings are the mean, where when I have the data, I need to build my embeddings. I would say embeddings, the form embeddings vector. And in Google Cloud, there is a model available. So generally, what would happen is when you have your own data, so you feed that to an embeddings model, you get the response, and then you make the LLMs leverage those embeddings vector as part of your response. That's how generally RAG works. This capability is available out of the box in Google Cloud, but then we might have to use the model to train. Again, another view of so generally what happens, and where do we need to run what, right? In terms of, like, if I have this different layers for me to do embedding, where do I need to run what? Generally, I run my applications. Yeah, like generally I run my applications in an environment which is helpful for me to deploy, where then I use some form of a database or a vector for me to store and build the embeddings. and then I would serve the model, or I would serve the request by leveraging a combination of, I would say, the application, the LLM interface, and then the, I would say, the embeddings in the form of vector, and then my eventual response. Yeah. So here I'm trying to emboss, like I did talk about the apps, I did talk about embeddings, I did talk about the actual response. So what are the Google Cloud offerings which would play a role in each of these stages? Cloud Run, or I would say a scalable runtime would come in handy as a front end, or as the, I would say, my applications, the first point of contact when the clients interface. The second one is I might use any of the vector, I would say, storage offerings. Here I did mention about, I'm mentioning about the LIDB, or PG vector. That kind of an offering is available. The last one is the entire Vertex AI, which we did talk about in one particular slide. The end-to-end capability of the Vertex AI would come and play, whether I'm going to use an existing model, I'm going to build a model, I'm going to like provide or customize a model which is existing. Yeah, these are the different components part of the ecosystem for us to deploy. It could be in the application, or it could be model, or it could be how do I ground a particular model, or how do I leverage the existing database, or the different storage options. Yeah. Again, this is about an architectural view of if you have to build an end-to-end application which would be RAG in nature, what would happen during the data onboarding as well as during serving, right? So I would have the data ingestion, I would have the databases for me to store, then I have to leverage a quality evaluation system for me to make sure I'm grounded as well as I'm not hallucinating, and I'm also not giving unsafe responses, and also I serve in a scalable manner, right? So I would say this is a typical four layer, I would say, a design for somebody who's trying to build the RAG kind of an application. Yeah. Again, I try to emboss the capabilities. I'll try to double click into each of these layers. As part of the ingestion, I might ingest data in an event based mechanism. I need to have an event mechanism for me to get the data, cleanse the data. I need to have a pipeline for me to make sure the data is consumable. Then as part of the serving, I need to have mechanism for me to scale as an application, where I mean, will it scale, like, can I go to market with 100 users as my first cut, and then how do I scale it to, let's say, 100,000 users? I need to have an infrastructure which will help me to scale. That is at the right hand side. And also, how do I make sure that the entire ML ops is covered for me? Yeah, so this is another view about an end-to-end, which we did talk about the application, the LLM models, as well as the how do we ground by leveraging the DB offering. So I'm seeing a lot of customers using this Alloy DB and PG. Yeah, so the PG version of the Alloy, also the Vector DB. Right, so those are three different offerings being leveraged. There is an article which is available in the cloud.google.com slash the RAG use case. You may find, I would say, a pattern. I was also part of one such pattern. You may want to look at that. And for any follow-up questions, you may reach out to any of us from the Google Cloud, and we'll be able to help you guys. Again, I'm trying to summarize what are the different runtime options available, and then different storage options available. There is a cloud run, right? If you want to hit the ground running faster, where you have the application in a continuous format, you want to get started, or there is an option where you want to have more control over your deployment and your infrastructure. In terms of the application side, Kubernetes would come and play. Or if you want to have the complete ML ops to be handled automatically for you, then Vertex AI is the option, right? These are three different options. In terms of storage, I've seen customers leveraging Cloud SQL or LIDB, the PG part. And also, I'm seeing customers leveraging, let's say, Spanner if somebody wants to really scale higher, or like somebody who wants to deal with, let's say, terabytes and terabytes of data. Somebody wants to look at their data as event and always look at the time series data. I've seen the big table being leveraged. The last one is about Firebase. I'm sure anybody who is into the B2C, definitely you guys would have seen Firebase and would have leveraged. So these are three different or four different options where I've seen getting leveraged. Yes, yeah, this view is all about how do I make the decision, right? What do I need to use? This is something which we discussed in terms of what is the runtime for me to use. This is all about how do I host the model? Where do I need to host the model? This is a kind of a decision making. This is again about model. If I am somebody who's dealing with content, if I'm somebody trying to deal with image generation, if I'm somebody who is dealing with large language models, right? What is the right model for me to choose? Kind of a decision tree. I thought it would be helpful. Uh, the I would say this is my second last one in terms of decision making. Um, how do I make sure my models are grounded to the use case what we are referring to? There are the different options for us to ground. Also, like in the entire life cycle, what are the different options for me to store, let's say, terabytes and terabytes of data? There is a cloud storage, there is a file storage. So I've seen customer leveraging a combination of these or one of those based on the life cycle where they are in their development of the model or customization of the model. This is that the child example which I was referring to, right? So this is, I would say, a pictorial representation in an architectural way. Do I have a capability in Google Cloud where I'm trying to send a prompt or I'm trying to get a response in both the sides? How do I make sure that it is responsible, it is safer in nature? So yeah, I would request all of you to have a look at console.cloud.google.com. Please sign up for the GenAI capabilities and try leveraging Gemini. You will be able to appreciate this. There are 4 different levers by which you'll be able to interact. One is the top K, top P, or the temperature setting, or the safety settings. So this particular view talks about how do I make sure that my request and response is safer in nature when I'm going to serve my customers. Yeah, so this is all about how do I make sure my entire journey is efficient, right? The entire MLOps journey is efficient. Yeah, so these are I wanted to cover. If you try to recall, I did talk about the GenEng, I did talk about the LLMs, I did talk about the Vertex, I did talk about how do we make sure ground, I did talk about the different means by which we can make sure the models are grounded, and different means by which we'll be able to interface with the models, and how do we make the models safer. I'm sure you guys would have found this to be useful. So let me hand it over to Vaishnavi, and then if time permits, we'll take up some of the questions. Thanks,
Thank
Vaishnavi.
you. Thank you, Dandapani, for that insightful session and for also providing some of the action points in the path to channel the generative AI journey. And that is very much important for the audience as well. I now invite Anu Vajra to brief us more on the topic and what are the action points for the startups as well. Anu, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Uh, Good afternoon, all. I'm Anu Vajra. I'm the Startup Success Manager at Google for Startups Cloud program. I predominantly focus on all the startups who are either eligible for the program or are in the program and assist them with the journey for predominantly 2 years. That's the timeline for the program. So I will quickly give you all an insight of how the program works. And, there are 3 bifurcations for the program. We cater to startups from ideation stage to Series A stage of funding. So the program again depends upon the equity funding that each startups receives. So there are 3 tiers of programs. One is the start tier, which is for all the startups who are bootstrapped and are looking to understand more about GCP and want to play around in the environment and the ecosystem. The other two are the scale up program and the AI first program. So predominantly, most of the benefits for these 2 programs are the same. The scale up program or the scale up tier and the AI first program, both of them have 3 major benefits that the startup can avail. The financial benefits, technical benefits, and go-to-market strategies. So the financial benefits are predominantly on the credit side. For the start tier, it is an up to 200K program. Both the programs are for 2 years. So when I say up to 200K, in year 1 for the start tier, for the scale tier, you receive 100K of credits, and in year 2, it's up to another 100K of credits. And for the AI first program, in year 1, the startups receive 250K of credits in year one and up to 100K of credits in year two. So the financial benefits of both these programs are dependent on just the credit side. Then we have the technical benefit, which is very important or comes to of great use to startups who sign up. So if you have your own DevOps team, or like how Dandapani had mentioned in your Gen Engine team, what exactly we do is we provide enterprise support, enhance of technical support to the startups. So $12,000 of enhanced support is provided to startups who will get into these two tiers. This is predominantly for all these startups who are not using a partner engine to, or a managed service from the partners to run their environment. So this is a 24/7, 365 days technical support that Google's Technical Resolvent Center will assist you with, which has a SLA which is, I think, lower than 4 to 5 hours. So apart from the credit facilities, you also can avail the technical benefits from the program. And we also have certain go-to-market strategy. This is tailored according to the startups who come into the program. And again, it could be either from the VC front. The VC arm is also part of the program. So if you're looking to get introduced into the VC ecosystem for your further fundings, or to just generically get into the VC ecosystem, then you can do that through the program. And we also have the one of the go-to-market strategies of getting hosted on Google's marketplace. So this is predominantly the two go-to-market strategies that we use in the program. Apart from this, there are certain ancillary benefits like other GBUs like Google Workspace and Google Maps. You get around $600 of Google Maps per month in year one. And also, if you're already using Google Workspace, then you can add net new 2 users to your current Workspace account. And you have around $500 of Google Cloud certification that either you or your extended team members can use to get certified on GCP. So predominantly, I spoke about the start tier, scale tier, and the AI program. We have recently, in the last quarter, launched the ecosystem tier. So for all these startups who are not VC funded and who are part of ANIs, that is accelerators and incubators, if your ANI is part of the Google's ecosystem partner, then you will be eligible for a 25K program. This is also a 2-year program. The entirety of the 25K can be used across the 2 years. So this is a very new program that we've come up with. If you have any other queries, you can ask Vaishnavi or post it on the comment about the program. But this is your QR code, and you can utilize this to sign up for the program. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Anu. Thank you so much for diving into details and letting us know what the program is well that can benefit the startups. And as we all know, the startups are now one of the primary foundations, along with enterprises, who are powering the economy, and also one of the primary frontiers for emerging technologies like generative AI as well. Anu and team has provided a QR code, so you can scan it and gain more information on this. We are still awaiting a few questions, but we have received a few. So Dandapani and Anu, I will pose a few of those questions which the audience wants to know more information on. Let's begin. Dandapani, Anu, what are the biggest challenges a startup faces when it comes to implementing or scaling AI?
Sure, Vaishnavi, I can take that up. Number one is, as a startup, right? I would try to put them into one of the three categories. One is, am I an LLM builder? Am I somebody who is trying to do LLM ops or ML ops, or provide that as a capability? Or am I somebody who is trying to build the application? So, one of the challenges, what I've noticed with startups is, where are they placed and how do they make sure that they play to their potential and they focus in that particular area in one of these categories, right? I don't want to be all across. The reason I'm making this particular statement is, if there is a capability which is available where I'll be able to go to market faster, let me do that, right? Let me not try to be all over. let me try to be in the phase, in I would say in the space where I want to operate. Let me position myself in the space, then let me try to go to market faster. This is one challenge which I've seen, where like if LLM ops is already solved, let me not do that. If a model is already existing which is solving the problem what I'm trying to do, let me not try to build the model or tune the model or pre-train the model from ground up. Let me use that foundation model and go to market faster. The reason being, if I don't study for 2 days, then I feel like I'm outdated, right? I'm sure it is applicable to startups as well, in terms of like how do they catch up to what's happening in the industry, and how do they go to market fast. This is I mean, I would say this is the first and foremost challenge, Vaishnavi. I mean, once we have an answer, or once we know where
Mhm.
exactly we're grounded in across these three, then there are capabilities available for us to, right, go to market fast and build and develop faster.
Sure. Figure out your where, and then there is a how. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sure. So, Dandapani, is there a common use case that acts as a common denominator that will transform how the industries function, agnostic, sector agnostic, with AI coming into the picture and AI having its inflection point this year?
Yes, but it is getting addressed in some form if you look at it, right? Say if I look back uh, an year or 9 months back, right, how things were, probably the large language model, like, it was evolving so fast. Number one, it was trying to catch up with respect to should I provide text input, text output, an audio input, text output, video generation, image generation. So in that way, the system has evolved. The multimodality is available now, right? So I mean, we have the capabilities available for us to, I would say, address the use cases faster. So the evolution has happened, if you ask me, right? It's all about how do I leverage what is existing. Yeah.
Hmm. So there's a question from the audience. How is AI impacting search? And when it comes to vernacular languages, say Hindi or any other vernacular language, what is the impact seen?
Good question. So let me try to answer it from a perspective of what I'm seeing, not from a Google lens, right? So let me not try to, I would say, bias my response based on, right, what Google as a search we are trying to do. Rather than let me try to provide how the industry is trying to address this. So basically, now when I ask for something, what am I looking for as a response as an end user? I am looking for a context oriented response, and a response which have references to what I'm asking for, right? So this is what is happening. A response which has this kind of a knowledge engine is something where I'm seeing the industry is getting into, so that I am relevant to what is being asked for. The second part of the question is the vernacular languages. It's not only for India, even this is applicable for the other geos as well. But in India, I would say we have the opportunity and privilege to deal with the diversifying nature of a language or the context. Um, it is really required. The reason being, what used to be a text interface, now it is all changing to be a voice interface. Meaning that will help me to make sure that I'll be able to attract the user base which is not being touched or which is untapped. So when it has to happen, like the pre-sale scenario which I was referring to, we need to make sure that we as an application for a business interface or interact with the customer in a way they're comfortable with. It could be language, it could be slang, or it could be the response what I'm giving. Right? For all these three need to happen, the vernacularness as well as the context awareness is really required, Vaishnavi.
Understood. Thank you, Dandapani. Also, I'm not sure of the question. What about VM cloud storage for O365? O365.
VM cloud storage for Office 365. I think somebody has asked about O365 if they are referring to a workspace suite. Um, Yeah, I'm not sure whether I would be able to talk about. Yeah,
Either. Yeah. So I would request the gentleman or the lady, if you could frame the question in a way that Dandapani or Anu can answer, we will get back to you, or you can leave the question if the time permits. We will send a clarification through the team.
Vaishnavi, you may want to capture if they come back to you guys, and definitely we'll be able to help you guys to the right response.
Yes, yes, there will be resources available as well. We will direct the answer to you.
Yeah.
One more question, last question. Is SEO in danger with AI generated content?
Not really. This is why I was referring to in the entire flow, right? I kind of concluded my session with how responsible we need to be. That's why I generally use this analogy. If I have to teach my kid what kind of, I would say, the responsibility I carry in my shoulders, the same responsibility we all need to carry to make sure that, I mean, we give the right response. We give the response which is not hallucinated, which is not biased, which would do the good, I would say, right? Yeah.
Perfect. So there's one last question. It's an important question. I would like you to address it, Dandapani. On the lines of what you spoke just now, biased data in output of the prompt or ethical challenges, governance, framework, integration, these are all challenges for an organization. One of the audience member wants to know how you can tackle it. If you could summarize, I think you also spoke about this in the conversation, but if you could summarize quickly on this, that'd be great.
Sure. Grounding is something which the, I would say, the application building enterprise or a business need to take care. There are mechanisms and provisions and patterns available, design patterns available, for someone to adopt. In terms of the responsibility, how can I be responsible in nature when I'm going to adopt AI? There is something called safety settings in Google Cloud. I would say please do have a look at that. At this point, it is kind of discrete in nature. There are 4 different categories in which you may want to filter the response. Do you want none, meaning no safety settings? Some are few. So based on what one chooses when they are trying to use the model for, when they are trying to get the inference, the responses would be right, would be taken care. Meaning the kind of safety settings that you applied is based on what we are going to ask for. Do I want a response which is as generic as possible, and then I'm going to apply the filter in terms of what I'm going to get, or I want the model to be as responsible as possible, even if I don't get a response at times, I'm fine with that. I'm going to iterate through by using a mechanism called chain of thought or chain of thought prompting, COT they call it, where I get a response. I need to make sure that okay, there are 2 scenarios. One is I get a very generic response. It's
Mm.
not good for my user base. I need to make sure I need to get the narrow down response. What do I need to do? I need to use something like a COT, right? Chain of thought, kind of a prompting mechanism for me to get. The second one is I want to make sure that my responses would always looked upon as 100% accurate, right? I won't hallucinate. Then do I need to have that mechanism, or do I ask the LLM system to filter as much as possible? Safety settings is the right option for us to leverage.
So the control always rests with the user in this case as to how they want to view the response.
Yes, yes,
Perfect. So that also provides context for them, and answer is in the context of what they envisioned the prompt to be.
that's right. Yeah, that's
Uh,
where I was referring to, right? How efficient one need to be when we are asking, right?
mm,
Because these models are like kids. I mean, they've trained with a plethora of data. They know everything, I would say. But then let's ask the right question so that we'll get the right response. In-
yes, I remember that was a very pertinent point. Either you ask a specific question in a specific way, or you end up asking multiple questions till you arrive at the response. Yes. With this, we come to the end of the discussion. If you have more questions, do drop by in the chat box or address it to the team. We will get it answered through best of our abilities with Dandapani and Anu on board as well. Thank you, Dandapani. Thank you, Anu, and the Google Cloud team for sharing your insights. Thank you, audience, for your time, and the ETCIO team for facilitating it. See you soon. Till then, goodbye and have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Well,